Good morning, friends. Welcome to a discussion on payment and settlement systems. In today's discussion, we will understand briefly how payment and settlement systems operate and the key elements of the payment and settlement systems. When we speak about the three key elements of payment and settlement systems, the first key element is a message. When you want to make a payment, you would make a payment by using either an electronic mechanism like swiping the card, or maybe using the internet banking facility or an app on your mobile phone. Alternatively, you may write a check or get a demand draft and issue that demand draft, which means a message can get created in two basic ways. One is the paper mechanism, a check or a demand draft. A check is a message from you to your bank asking your bank to make a payment to a certain party. And when you go to the merchant's place and swipe your card at a POS machine, you are again telling your banker that this particular merchant needs to be paid. The first key element then is a message which could be created in a paper form or an electronic form. Once a message is created, the message will go to your bank. Your bank would like then to make a payment to the other side, the beneficiary. The beneficiary may be banking with your own bank, or the beneficiary may have an account with another bank. If the beneficiary has an account with the same bank where you have your account, in that case there is no need to carry out any further transaction processing outside your bank. Your bank will then debit your account and then the credit account of the beneficiary. On the other hand, if the beneficiary, the party to be paid, is with some other bank, then we'll need some network, some party which will connect your bank with the beneficiary's bank. And that network is called as the second component, which is the clearing system. The role of a clearing system involves taking message from one party, one bank to another bank, and then computing the obligation. The clearing system will compute the obligations in two basic ways. One, it would compute the obligation in a gross way, which means it will take the money from one bank and will calculate how much money the other bank needs to receive. Alternatively, the calculation of the obligation can be done in a netted way. In a net way meaning, let us take an example. Bank A has to make a payment of $1,000 to Bank B, and Bank B has to make a payment of $400 to Bank A. In such a situation, the obligations can be calculated in a net way of $400. Bank A then needs to pay $400 to Bank B. This is what will be done by the clearing system. The clearing system will compute the obligation of what needs to be paid by one bank to other bank. Once the obligation is calculated, the banks actually need to exchange this money. And when the exchange is to be made, we need some system which will carry out the third element, which is settlement. Settlement would then mean take money from one bank having a payable position and give that money to another bank which has a receivable position. To sum up what we discussed till now, we said that we could have a message. The message could be in electronic form or in paper form. Once the message is moving from one bank to the other bank, we'll need a clearing system. The clearing system will then compute the obligation. The obligation calculation can then be done in a gross way or in a netted way. If it is done in a netted way, then first step is to compute bilateral net obligation and then further calculate the multilateral net obligations. Once the calculation is done, then as we said, the third step is the settlement. The settlement would be done in a gross way. If the calculation of the obligation is done in a gross way, the settlement would be done in a net way if the calculation is done in a net way. Now, to summarize, we have three key elements: the message, the clearing, and the settlement. Now let us look at how the entities will carry out the process, how the banks and the clearing systems carry out the process. There could be different mechanisms of using these three key elements. Let's understand the first mechanism. In the first mechanism, we'll have the clearinghouse receiving the message, computing the net obligation, and then settling the net obligation at a particular settlement institution. When this process is followed, and when we are using a settlement institution at which all the member banks will have their accounts, we will call this as the DNS. DNS could mean the deferred netted system, It could be called as a daily netted system if we have only one batch of netting during a day, or it could be a determined time net system. Maybe we calculate the net once at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, once again at 6 o'clock in the evening, and then we settle the transaction twice in a day. Then I could call this as a determined time net system. There could be another mechanism to use these three key elements, and that is what we will call as the real-time gross settlement system. In real-time gross settlement system, the clearing system, which is the RTGS system, will receive a message. That message would be considered to compute the obligation, but here we are not going to compute the net obligation. We compute the obligation in a gross way and instantaneously, in real time, settle that obligation. So when we receive the message, process the message immediately, compute the obligation in a gross way and settle the obligation in a gross way in real time. This is how the real-time gross settlement system would operate. Now we have talked about two mechanisms. Let's look at the third one. In the third one, we will use a combination of the DNS, that is netted system, and also use the RTGS. In this system, we will compute the obligation in a net way. Once the obligation is computed in the net way by the clearinghouse, then we would use the RTGS system to settle that obligation. Now we could have examples of this from different places. One example of this would be the step 2 mechanism in the single euro payment area. In step 2 mechanism, the step 2 mechanism will compute the net obligation and then inform target 2, which is the RTGS system of single euro payment area, to carry out the settlement. Similarly, in India, we have the NEFT, National Electronic Fund Transfer System. The NEFT in India, which is operated by the National Payments Corporation of India, it would compute the net obligation, inform the net obligation to the Reserve Bank of India, and then the settlement would be carried out at RTGS of the Reserve Bank of India. Till this time, we have spoken about three mechanisms. 1, the DNS, 2, the RTGS, and 3, the hybrid system like NEFT or like the step 2 mechanism. Now apart from these, there could be a fourth mechanism which is known as the real-time final settlement system. The CHIPS, the Clearinghouse Interbank Payment Systems in United States, is an RTFS. The Large Value Transfer System in Canada is an RTFS. The IMPS in India is an RTFS. Let us understand how RTFS is different than the earlier three. In an RTFS, the clearing system will receive the message, compute the net obligation, and then inform the beneficiary's bank to pay the beneficiary. After the beneficiary has been paid, then the settlement between both the banks, that is the paying bank and the receiving bank, will be carried out. Now in the earlier three mechanisms, in DNS, RTGS, and in hybrid, the settlement happens before the beneficiary is paid. But in RTFS, the settlement happens after the beneficiary is paid, and this would involve certain types of risks. So now let me summarize four mechanisms which we have spoken about. Mechanism 1 is the DNS, mechanism 2 is the RTGS, mechanism 3 is the hybrid systems, and mechanism 4 is the RTFS system. Consulting offers 4 programs on payment certifications: the CIPSP, the CPPS, the CCPSP, and the CPME. The CIPSP covers understanding operations of various domestic and international payment systems such as the American Fedwire, the CHIPS in United States, the Automated Clearinghouses in United States, and also the National Settlement Service in the United States. We also cover the Canadian Large Value Transfer System, LVTS. In SEPA, we cover Target 2, the RTGS of Single Euro Payment Area. We also cover Step 2 mechanism, including the Step 2 SEPA Credit Transfer and also Step 2 Pan-European Direct Debit, the SDD. In the Chinese and the Hong Kong payment systems, we cover the foreign currency domestic payment system. In China, we also cover the cross-border interbank payment system CIPS, and we also cover the clearinghouse automated transfer system, the RTGS system in Hong Kong. The focus of CIPSP is more on how the payment systems, that is the clearing and settlement mechanisms, operate. The second course which we offer is the CPPS, the Certified Payment Processing Specialist. In this, we will understand payment transaction processing within a bank, in which we cover how payment engines and payment hubs function. We will also discuss different types of applications which are used in a bank to achieve straight-through processing. This course also covers the discussion on SWIFT MTs and the ISO 20022 messaging standard. The third program which we have in payment systems is the Certified Card Payment Systems Professional. In this program, we will understand end-to-end card payment transaction processing with an overview of ISO 8583. This covers understanding how a switch operates, what is the function of the host security module, and how the authorization, authentication, and accounting of the payment transactions are done when you use a card using devices such as ATM, the POS machines, on the web transactions, and also the mail order, telephone order transactions. The fourth program in payments is the CPME, the Certified Payment Messaging Expert. This program focuses only on the key element of messages. Across the world, there are various formats we use for messaging in payment systems. In CPME program, we understand in depth messaging standards like the SWIFT MT, which will cover SWIFT Series 1, Series 2, and Series 9 in detail. It also covers ISO 20022, also known as SWIFT MX, the XML messaging, which will cover PACS, the payment clearing and settlement messages. It will also cover the PAIN messages, the payment initiation messages, and it will also cover the CAMT messages, the cash management messages used in ISO 20022. The program also covers Fedwire and CHIPS formats, and this will enable you to understand in depth how the messaging is done in payment systems. Now moving forward to understanding the difference between CIPSP and the CPPS. The key learning objectives in CIPSP are understanding the operations of international payment systems. That is how the CSMs operate. So it will cover transactions which will start from the originating bank, that is the debtor agent bank, through the clearing and settlement mechanism onward to the receiving bank, the beneficiaries bank, also known as the creditor's agent. As against the CIPSP coverage, which focuses more on the operations of clearing and settlement mechanism, the CPPS program covers how a bank would communicate with its customer and vice versa in order to carry out the payment transaction processing. This covers various applications including the payment engines and the payment hubs, also the authentication mechanisms and the accounting mechanisms which are used at the bank. This also covers understanding the foreign exchange mechanisms operated at the bank.